So let's just sit for a moment or lie down. We're going to begin lying down. So if you want to just go there right now, you can. I just like to, just come into a sense of slowing down and a sense of really feeling grounded. So all of the energies that have been moving around and swirling and maybe even a bit fragmented, let's just at least have a recognition that even if we're, on the floor somewhere, on a mat somewhere, that indeed the vastness and the security and the depth of the earth is beneath us. So just allow any of that residual fragmentation and anxiety of energy just to seep out a bit and allow the earth to receive it. So we'll just begin with the sense of being grounded. Another discipline of yoga. So if you're not already lying down, let's lie down here, please. And then one simple thing I want to add to that, if you indeed have a small bolster or just a blanket with a little weight to it, or maybe even 2 blankets, a weight would be good. So lying down, what I'm going to invite is just to place the bolster on the lower belly. So right down, nice and low. So either that small bolster, or if you don't have the bolster, just something to bring a little awareness and attention to this part of the body. So you could even use both if you wanted to. If I was going to use both, I would put the small bolster lower, more at the pubic bone, and I would bring the blanketing up more into the solar plexus. But both is not necessary. I just want to feel some weight in this intestinal area, really. And then let the legs relax out comfortably. Let the arms be comfortable. If you feel a little bit of too much pressure on the tailbone, you can slip a towel or a blanket under there. Just don't make it arch the lower back, just for some comfort and support. So part of this exploration, and this is always a really nice way to begin, and it's just a nice way to sort of open up space for the body to relax, especially when we have all of these sort of, standardized asanas, if you will, where we're, very anxious to release tension into the lower back or the back of the legs or the upper body. But one of the things that we get to explore is that there's also a kind of anxiety tension that just gets woven into this part of the body. It may not be specifically anatomical, but it's there. So 2 things I'm going to invite you to do And just do this just very slowly. Be much more interested in the just the felt sense of this, but to inhale and press the weight up. So the blankets, the bolster, just press it up and then stay there for a few moments and feel if indeed there is a layer or a thread of anxiety. And then when you exhale, just let that release a bit. And just do this, definitely at your own pace. There's nothing to do but explore and feel and relax and listen. So we're not looking for any points specifically, anything, anatomical, but just a general sort of deeper anxiety or tension or just something that's woven in that we can't even put a name to it. And just giving this area of the body attention in terms of its its overall importance to the body, its intelligence to the body. So just to come in very slowly and begin to explore that. The other thing I would like to bring your attention to is, so here we have been invited to breathe consciously, to inhale and explore sensation, to exhale and release sensation. So what I would like you to notice is how powerfully distracting the mind can be. So I just want you to notice that how many of these breaths will you take before the mind will just, it seems imperceptible or very often not aware that it takes us elsewhere. So just examine that. I'm not saying we need to correct that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying we're getting to explore sort of something twofold: sensation within the gut and the way, how highly distractible the mind is when we're asked to do just a simple thing like stay conscious with our breath. The mind has such a power and a habit to draw us away. So let's just do this for a bit. And part of the fading away, part of the opportunity that you create for the mind to hijack you is just we start slowing the breath down. So the invitation is to take a really full, deep inhalation into the lower belly. Really allow it to feel like you're pressing up against it, just so we can feel the subtlety of the sensation. And then the exhalation, the release of the exhalation, we want that to be complete. So this is a very long, lengthy, extended exploration of the out breath. So what tends to happen is we start to back away from that. We just come into just an unconscious breathing, and then this is an opportunity for the mind to come in and, like I said, hijack us. So the consciousness of breath, the awareness of sensation, and then the capacity of the mind to draw us out of that actuality into a virtuality, you might say. And certainly when I mention this area of the body, this digestive area as intelligent, I don't simply mean the intelligence of it has the capacity to physically, digest our food and draw nutrition from that and nourish us. But there's also an emotional intelligence in this area of the body. So you can often, talk about the heart and, feeling the heart and this emotional center of the heart. But this area of the body is just as much an emotional center, and the connection between them is profound. So allow the subtle movement of the breath and the subtle pulsing of the heart to just to make some level of connection, and just feel into this very intelligent, emotionally brilliant body that we live in. Good. So now let's just remove the bolstering. So any weight you have on your tummy, your solar plexus, just push it aside, and just let's lie here for a few more moments and just feel the pulsation of the belly, the gut, the intestines, the lower solar plexus. And since just the simplicity of noticing is incredibly foundational to our yoga, to just our experience of being in this mind body, just noticing is simple and profound. One of the things we can start to do to take this a little bit further is to just set in your mind, you're only going to focus on your breathing. You're going to feel and be conscious of the fullness of the inhale. You're going to feel and be conscious of the fullness of the exhale. And then see if you can notice, coming back to noticing, when that mental habit, that distractive, discursive thinking starts to approach and draw you away. This is incredibly subtle. Because we can start to see that, we can start to tease open a little bit of space between our intention, our contemplation of the breath, and the way these urges of the mind, they just kind of rise, kind of like a slow swell coming from the depths of the ocean, starting to form into a wave. And just to observe this, it's a way to kind of bring a great sensitivity to this quality of noticing. Good. So from here, hopefully you've removed your bolstering in your belly. Let's just turn over on your side and come into a fetal position. So just bringing the knees up nice and high, relaxing on the shoulder. I think good to pull something under the head for this, so the neck's not completely dangling down. So we're going to be, let's be on the left shoulder, just so we're all on the same shoulder. So we're resting our head on this bolster now. So what I'm going to suggest here
is to keep the right shoulder over the left shoulder. Raise the right arm up towards the ceiling, and then without letting that right shoulder come down to the floor, just let the arm kind of pull out of the socket and stretch the shoulder and the chest area. So the tendency certainly will be for that right shoulder to want to follow the weight of the arm. I'm suggesting to avoid that. Leave the right shoulder over the left, curled up in a ball, and just let this right arm drift as far back as your range of motion will allow without releasing that shoulder. And then use the weight of the arm. Once you've settled to where you think it's a good spot, you can move it a little more towards the head or a little down more towards the hips, or just find a nice place that can rest and relax. You need a little bit more support for the head. And I'm just gonna let you have some time to just intuitively let the arm help you explore this upper body twist. But again, if you feel the shoulder going too far, what'll happen, nothing wrong with this, it'll just turn into a reclining twist if the right shoulder goes to the floor. I'm suggesting to avoid that right now and to just keep the right shoulder over the left.
And of course, you know, none of these positions are meant to, you know, be very specific or technical or get them right. So the moment you come into feeling, the moment the position evokes something, this is fine, this is good. So allow that really to be your guide. Something is being evoked, and how does my body mind respond? What am I exploring? What am I following? And sometimes it can morph into something, you know, beyond the template. Sometimes it's perfect the way it is.
Good. So let's indeed turn this into a reclining twist. So very easy now, I've already suggested it. We'll simply allow now this right arm, this right shoulder as well to come to the floor, and just keep the knees to where they are. You might want to remove the bolster for your head at this point. So now I've attempted to let the right shoulder relax to the floor. And this right leg may come up a little bit, that's fine, but we do have both knees pulled into the chest as much as possible. And then another option here, you can either stay in this you know, very simple reclining twist, it's very lovely, or if you'd like to add a little bit of weight to this, what I would suggest is to start to open that top leg out. So you're unbending the right knee, but you're not putting it towards the left foot, you're putting it up towards that left shoulder. So it's coming up towards the head, and then it's just a little weighted in the air, or it could just rest on the floor in that direction. So for me, that means both knees are touching, or I could bring it up a little higher so it's dangling in the air. And then the full weight of this right leg is taking me a little bit deeper into this reclining twist. Try not to let that weight of the leg bring the right shoulder off the floor. Good to keep the right shoulder grounded. And we'll spend some time here. a simple contemplation on the nature of your life force, energy, sensations as they are and as they morph into imagery, concept, semantical modes, stories. So it's a lovely, it's a lovely container. It's never either or. It's wherever you happen to bring that attention, wherever you have to be conscious of, that's it. Good. So if you have that right leg dangling out towards your face there, you can bend it back in now, and let's everyone bring both legs up. So we'll come to a flat back and just relax the legs out. And we'll just stay here for a few moments since we did upper and lower twist, just to rest for a bit. And then indeed, let's roll over to now the right side into a fetal position, all curled up. Let's see, what's the best way to see this if you're looking? You don't really need to look, it's very simple. So we've got the knees up, we're on now the right shoulder. We're going to extend that left arm up. And again, the simplicity of this is just not to let the left shoulder go too far back. We want to keep the left shoulder over the right. So it's just the weight of the arm into the upper shoulder that's allowing us to explore, what's ever evoked physically. And again, be somewhat curious. You can either set it where you know you want it to be, or you can just let it kind of sway back and forth and ease into restriction and out of restriction and just feel it. Just always going slow and carefully, mindfully. And continually, just coming back to this open-ended quality of noticing, not with an intention or anything specific. One of the beautiful things about just the open-endedness of noticing is then what we're noticing is always changing. So if we don't follow the change from change to change and try to stay up with it, because it's typically, just appearing and vanishing so quickly, but just stay with the texture of noticing, it gives us a very different way to contemplate what we're exploring. So same thing on this side. If you're ready, we can, leave the legs where they are. So both legs are curled up towards the chest. And as that arm releases, we'll just let that left shoulder come to the floor. So now you're in a nice reclining twist. You can just stay here as it is. It's lovely that way. Or yeah, I can kind of, if you're looking at the screen, I'm just opening my leg up and out. So the left foot is coming towards the right shoulder. And then it's either, for me, right, if this high up, it's definitely dangling. And that's a lot of weight pulling into my left lumbar. I could keep it there, or I could let it relax down on the floor somewhere a little lower. It's still significant this way. So it's a way to, kind of thinking of the left leg as a prop in a way, because it's so weighted that it'll pull into the threads of the lumbar area that we don't typically get to if we just keep the legs up.
Although I do have to say, now that I'm really thinking about it here, that just to ask the question, advanced yogi or smartass, the question kind of answers itself. So I'll just let it rest. Such a fine line, though, such a delicate balance. As is just the privilege of being alive, a delicate balance. And it's so interesting how we, really the vastness of yoga is to hold space for us to explore, not only the balance itself, but what are we balancing? How do your energies appear to you? How do they feel? What is your experience? And how do you allow them to come into their own sense of balance, or what techniques or practices or just your relationship? Because once we're in balance, once we are sitting quietly in equanimity, then there's nothing to do. There is no more balance. Good. So if you have the top leg extended, you can relax it back down. We can bring both knees up, and let's just rest for a few moments here. And that's, really the study of the fascial restriction at this level where we're moving really slowly. So older forms, and maybe some current forms of dealing with fascial restriction, was often, very mechanical and aggressive and often painful. This was an attempt to force a system that fundamentally cannot be forced. The entire fabric and structure of the body, the collagenous fibers and the fascial fibers, it cannot be forced. And when they are forced or they're overly restricted, the fluid substance, the containers of the fluid of the body, the ground substances start to dehydrate and solidify. So two things with this. First of all, we must feel safe. in moving into them. And we slowly, gently move into these fascial barriers. So just think of a webbing or a meshing that is tightened. This is what you're feeling, dehydrated and tightened. We call this a fascial barrier. So to move into it slowly and mindfully is the only way the body's not going to clench back into protection mode. But what to know is that this fascial barrier is different for everyone. So it's based on how you've received traumas, how you move in repetitive patterns, and on and on. So moving into the body in a very, very soft and delicate and slow way, not in an aggressive or painful way. So then we can rest and we can feel, and this is why we spend the time. The fascial barrier needs time to feel safe. It needs time to respond. It needs time to start to, opening is really a generalization. It's doing much more than that. It's responding to the pressure. But if we force it, we clench, nothing happens. If we relax, it starts to respond, and then this is unique to you. So be careful with this idea of depth or how intense you think it should be. Much better to listen to just the nuance of the sensation at a level of, pain or discomfort, because that's giving you a signal to listen. So let's come on up, please, and let's bring the soles of the feet together. And again, so let me just emphasize, this is why we spend so much time. We're not spending the time to go as deeply as we think we can go into a position because it looks good, or we think we should, and then just wait till it's over. We're interested in the journey. We're interested in the physical contact with this fascial barrier. To talk about it's one thing, to feel it is another. The body's clenching, it's protecting, it's relaxing, not sure. So again, the fascial barrier is different for everyone. So just explore it. Don't have an intention or an aesthetic. So soles of the feet together, hips nice and open and relaxed. You can always put stuff under the thighs, the knees if you'd like. And then really let the descent be very, very gradual, very layered. Think of it as layered. And then where it starts to restrict, very often this represents an element of this fascial barrier. And if indeed you do want to relax the mind even more, just notice this dynamic that I spoke of. Just go back to your breath for no other reason than just to slow it down, just to relax it. And feel the presence of the breath through your entire being. And then notice slowing down the breath, calming the breath will diminish the intensity of the thoughts arising and fading at such a velocity, and they begin to slow down. And then we just notice that, oh, okay, here comes one, and before I know it, I'm off over here. I'm no longer with the breath. So again, this is not a technical thing. We're not trying to create a pranayama to open up our third eye. We're simply using the breath as presence. We're using the breath in relationship to this noticing. And then we're also then noticing when we drift away. But it's a lovely way to just slow down, calming the breath and calming the mind. And from a yoga perspective, this noticing is not simply a matter of, using our will to focus on something. Focus is a bit different. This is just recognizing really a different mode of intelligent engagement. So there's a tremendous throbbing intelligence, and we're noticing from this perspective, but it's in a way it's a removed noticing. It's not a focus where we penetrate the object that we're focusing on. We're just noticing it, and we're noticing that it morphs. We're noticing that it doesn't stay the same. But to notice the quality of that noticing allows us to recede from the content or the object that we're noticing. So this is just opening up space. This is a recognition of the nuance and the subtlety of noticing, and a bit different than focusing. Good. So let's come on up from here, our lovely butterfly pose, and get yourself a nice hefty towel or a nice hefty blanket, and just begin to fold it so you have a nice hefty pad, a block approximation. So it's you've seen those yoga cork or wood blocks, so about that size. Yeah, good. So this works best with a nice heavy blanket. It works well with, you could use a couple of towels. We just want sort of a pad to place in the mid back. So what we're going to do, and also you may want something to not strain or pinch the neck. You might want something for the head above. But what we're going to simply do is we're going to sit in front of this blanket or conglomeration of towels and snuggle it
No, I'm sorry. We're not going to snuggle. There'll be no snuggling right now. We'll get to snuggling. But what we're going to do is place the pelvis on the back of it. Yeah. So I was going into that and it just didn't feel right. So it sort of reminded me what we're doing. My body reminded me, which is lovely. We're going to place the pelvis up on this block that you've created. So not the lower back. If you place it too high up, you're going to feel compression in the lower back. It's something we often do, but we want the actuality of the pelvis here and relax the legs out. Then you may or may not want something for your head. Try not to bring the chin down here. So the head's fine this way. If you wanted a little something under the neck, yeah, that would be fine. Not necessary, but fine. And make sure the pelvis isn't tilting back a bit into the lumbar area. So you may need to pull that pad forward a bit. Yeah, that can be rather subtle. If you have it too high up towards the lumbar, you're not technically in the lumbar, but the pelvis will tilt back and it'll put some pressure on that sacral lumbar joint. So we want to pull it down a bit. Yeah, pull it down and then just relax the legs out. So you're just feeling this lovely, soft, supportive compression into the pelvis. The legs right now are straight and head as you will. I don't know if that's technically a joint. It's the lower lumbar vertebrae sets into the sacrum. I have to look that up. A joint. Good. So just relax here, just to let it seep in. And then if we do want to come back to the presence of our breathing, a lovely discernment to start to make is a feeling between just a very mechanical in and out. And that's often in the upper chest. It's often very shallow. It has very little presence to it, very little expansion or even aliveness. So the discernment between this sort of in, out mechanical breath and between that and just a rhythmic breath. So you feel that the breath is creating this internal rhythm. And it begins to flow. And also with this, when then you start to reach a boundary or a range of motion with the breath, you can lean into that. You can soften that a bit. So if you think the inhale ends here and you breathe a little bit more, you're opening up space. If you think the exhale ends there, same thing, you exhale a little bit more,
you're leaning into this supposed boundary, and then before you know it, you're breathing in a very rhythmic way. And also the breath is very cleansing when we breathe this way. The breath and the presence of the micro movement of the body, the nourishment of the movement of the organs, and many things. Good. So if you're in a good place, you can stay right where you are. But what's a really nice hip opening here is to leave that right leg extended where it is, and just simply bring that left foot up and in, and bring it under that right thigh or the right knee a bit. So anywhere you'll feel then as the left knee relaxes down, it's pulling and tugging and bringing you in a little closer to this left hip. So if you'd like to relax that left leg out, and then you can draw that right foot up and under. So I'm suggesting under a bit, often under the left knee it goes well. You can also put it under that the thigh as well. This just brings it up, and then the weight of that right leg over it can be very nice. And so you can also relax that right leg out now. And one of the ways to just kind of loosen up the muscular tightness that might still be there, and this is certainly optional for you depending on how
you're feeling in this area of the body. It's a very interesting, complex area, this pelvic area. But you could put the feet on the floor and just start to gently press the hips up a bit. And maybe even just have a little circular motion there, just kind of feel it, and then relax them back down. So I do understand it's very, just for the convenience of language to talk about the fascia and the skeleton and the muscles, but they're intimate. They are really always acting together, always in a dance and a relationship. So we just want to kind of feel this, what you're feeling in your skeleton, what you're feeling in your muscles, what you're feeling in your fascia. And then you can remove that bolster from the pelvis and then relax the pelvis down and just relax the legs out. And then let's roll to the side, bring the knees up, press yourself up, come on, up. And let's bring the soles of the feet together once again. So second time around after that pelvic tightening, going to be a little bit different. So continue to be sensitive, soften and relax. Make sure you're not pinching or holding unnecessary tension in the neck. And we'll just sink in for a second time. So the last class, or possibly the class before, I was inviting an exploration, but I don't feel like I was clear enough about what my real intention was. So what I was suggesting is that we take some time to just simply be grateful for being here. But not just because life is good and it's summertime and we just have this incredible new moon and we have enough food to eat. So not just being grateful that I'm here because life is as it is. What I was also suggesting is for us to relax back into the fabric of our memories and our past and appreciate all of the challenges and the traumas and the difficulties, and how ultimately those were very powerful teachers. And as the difficulty presented and life unfolded and we learned a valuable lesson, we then grew and we morphed and we changed. And the same thing happens again. We're presented with a challenge and a difficulty, possibly very painful or possibly seemingly insurmountable. But again,
there's a valuable lesson. Life is presenting us with something. And again, it morphs and unfolds and changes. And here we are. So what I was really trying to get at is to be grateful for this process, to be grateful that we have the capacity to look back and see that the teacher presents itself. And sometimes we learn and we're kicking and screaming, and other times we start to mature and to see, this is just simply another lesson. And can I start to understand that fundamentally suffering is always a signal? It's a signal that I'm attached to this object. I'm attached to things being a certain way. I'm attached to certainty and control. And am I allowed to relax back, soften into it, and see that it's just a lesson? So that kind of gratitude, like, wow, I'm still here, and I've been able to benefit from the transformation of just this primal life experience. Sometimes we don't see it coming, and sometimes we feel the tremors before it begins its teaching. And what I'm suggesting is that we are humble enough to sit in gratitude for this process. Good, so let's come on up from here then, please. So just roll up, stretch your legs out, have a little movement here. And then we're going to take that same bolstering that you had, again, replicating one of the yoga blocks or something similar, but we're using a blanket or a towel. And this time, certainly something for the head would be appropriate, because this time we're going into the upper back, so there'll be more overall arch. So this time, yes, I'm suggesting to put this in the upper back, not onto the shoulders, yeah, so the head can then relax back, but right at the shoulder blade area. And then if you're comfortable with the head all the way back, that's absolutely fine. If you're comfortable, it feels safe. If not, you can pull something underneath. And I often go back and forth between the two. I'll start with support, and then once everything starts to relax and I feel safe, and then I'll just see how I'm feeling in the upper neck. Sometimes sometimes you're open to exploring, but just make sure you feel safe there. Legs are relaxed out and open a bit. Arms are just at your side, and make any adjustments you need. You could be a little higher up onto the shoulder blades or a little below them. We just want to stay out of the lumbar curve specifically. And if you're not actually sure what this means to move from a mechanical breathing to a rhythmic breathing, don't try to understand it. Don't try to make it into a technique. Listen to and ask your breath. And you can do this really without altering the rhythm of the breath at all, by just listening to the breath and relaxing into the breath, feeling it as a flow, and just seeing where it naturally wants to go. And this will change. You know, oftentimes if we're feeling a certain level of physical or mental tension, the breath can express one way. Oftentimes when we're in deeper relaxation, the breath expresses another way. So never ever in this approach, yes, of course we have some more athletic yogas that use the breath in a more athletic way. We're much more interested in the aliveness and the nuance of the breathing in terms of really in terms of matching the rhythm of the body's overall sense of flow. There's no place that we look in the body that there's not a sense of flow, a sense of bringing itself inward and expanding itself outward. And so the breath is just naturally predisposed to weave into these internal rhythms. If you would like to bring your arms up over your head and find a nice spot for the shoulders, please do this now. So let's begin to come on out of this a bit. So you can release the arms if they're over the head, relax them, place the feet firmly on the floor, and have a little movement first, maybe the knees to the side, sway the hips a bit. You can start to bring, it's a little tricky to bring the knees up to the chest with this, but you could do it a bit, see how that feels. Again, we just want to kind of soften the myofascial tugging tension that builds and make sure we feel safe. But when you do feel safe, let's roll off of this and we'll take another rest. So often when I talk about unconscious holding patterns and habits, so something obviously we can explore, on many levels, but oftentimes what this means is that we just get so accustomed to the complexities of life. We just, begin in the morning and go till evening and have all of our things we need to figure out and do. And, before we process this one event, another event happens and it's just, just busy and cluttered and complex. So one of the things that this allows for, this in itself allows for us to be unaware of the subtlety of our breathing and just the simplicity of awareness and the felt sense that the body and mind can feel when it becomes still. So in a way, this practice is a counter to just all of this complexity. And once we do really begin a genuine resting and relaxing, but at the same time being just incredibly lucid and aware. So we're exploring right in the moment, we're exploring what is, that the absolute most profound depth of reality is simply this: whatever you're experiencing, whatever is actually in your experience, this is it. It's profound, but it's incredibly simple. This actuality, and what I mean by actuality is what is actual for you. Are you feeling the breath? Are you feeling discomfort in the knee? Are you preoccupied with what's for dinner? That's actual. What's actually happening, yes, is infinitely subtle. So the practice, the yoga, really the spirituality of yoga is to just go into this what isness, go into this actuality and see how incredibly subtle it is. How it's morphing and shifting and changing. And the only way we can attempt to get a solid handle on it is by going back into these complexities, layering it with concept, layering it with semantics, layering it with philosophies and beliefs. But to feel the pressure of your body laying against the floor, we don't need a belief for that. To feel the pulsing of your heart, we don't need a belief for that. There's a lovely Sanskrit term, neti neti, roughly translated as not this, not that. So this allows us then to approach this direct experience. And the moment we think it's that, it's not that. The moment we think it's not this. And so this just allows us to open up space into a relaxation and an expansiveness. And we hold this in balance. I was talking about balance earlier. It doesn't mean that conceptualizing is not good. Yes, when I get in my car, I want to conceptualize the stop sign. But we want to have a balance. We want to have a place where we can just be the breath and the heartbeat and the fabric of the entirety of the cosmos. And then we want to be able to get in the car and stop at the stop sign. Not this, not that. So we know on some level that we're everything, but we feel on some level that we're nothing. So let's come on up now, please. And just let me show, there's two parts to this, so I want to show them both before we do it, so I don't have to explain it too much. So there's two ways that you can do this. So what I'm exploring here is bending the right knee back and coming forward. So maybe yes, maybe no, depends on your knees, but only to know that this coming forward releases some of the pressure in the knee. So it's not that pressure sensitive, but really I'm only talking about my knees. So what we're attempting to do is the left leg out, the right knee bent back. So both knees are together, not squeezed together, but just parallel together. And then we're going to come forward into a forward bend. And this is pretty straightforward with a rounded back. So if this is not so compatible with you, you can take the right foot and put it on the inside of that left leg. We just do this, this particular position with the foot on the inside of the leg so often. Sometimes I like to mix it up. And then we're going to also add a back bend to this. So what we'll do then is we'll come into the forward bend with this right knee bent back. We'll do our forward bend for however long. Then we'll come up and bolstering, yes, maybe. If you are not able to go all the way to the floor with this, you can bring a bolster or some pillows and support the entire length of the torso over this. So this makes a nice sort of compromise between the backward bend, the compression in the knee together. If you don't need the bolstering and you can go down without it, that would be fine too. So we call this position the saddle position, and we come forward in the saddle and then we'll go back in the saddle. So again, if you don't need the bolster and you want to come all the way back, this is really lovely for any tightness in the quadricep. And then if that knee starts to come up, just let it come up, yeah? And then as the quadricep starts to respond, sometimes the knee will go back down. But if this is too much, bolster yourself up as high as you possibly need. So let's start with the left leg out, the right knee bent back, not end or, just or. Hard to do end. We'll put the sole of the right foot on the inside of the leg, and then we'll just come forward. Good. So let's come on into it. The left leg is out, the right knee is bent back. Or you could put the sole of the right foot on the inside, but we're coming forward either way, and then we'll go to the backward bend. So what is the breath? What is actually happening when you breathe? What is happening physically? Is this breath in any way connected to your memories, to your thoughts, just to your overall state? And so this is the kind of inquiry that we allow, but then we do not attempt to answer it. We just let it answer itself. We let the intelligence of the breath then guide us. We're simply opening to exploring what is the breath.
Good. So let's come on up from here. And if you don't have that right knee back and you want to try this, feel free to do that. If you're a little tentative with the depth without the bolster, you can put the bolster or some pillows or blankets, but you could also put things under the bolster. So you could build this up as high as you would like and then come over it with support. Again, so we can feel, well, there's a lot of stuff going on. I guess I emphasize the quadricep because mine tends to tighten up after a while. Or you could do it without the bolstering. And again, if the knee then feels still unsafe, even with the bolstering, then you can just keep it where it was on the inside of the leg and just put some pillows and or blankets, towels, and or the bolster, and just let the whole torso, so the head's not dangling down, it's also supported. So we can just make this into a backward bend. And just to say, this is how we encourage and explore our intuitive intelligence. Is we can ask something, we can have an inquiry, but then just not answer it. So if we ask a question, we can typically find the answer if we go looking for it. So this is just an engagement of
the left hemisphere of the brain. Nothing wrong with this. But if we want engagement with the right hemisphere, if we want engagement with an intuitive, a somatic intelligence, then we express an inquiry, but we don't attempt to answer it. We just relax into this intelligent engagement. And also to say this is how we cultivate this subtlety that I'm talking about. So if we're noticing something, if we're conscious that we're having a direct experience, and then we try to, we try to label it or photograph it with our mind or figure it out, then we stay at that level. Nothing wrong with that. If we can have direct experience and just not need to understand it, but understand or experience that the subtlety keeps opening, the subtlety keeps opening. And when we get into the realm of not being able to understand it, not being able to quantify it, label it, this is just a different experience. And this often brings us closer to this reality as it is. Incredibly simple, incredibly subtle, incredibly profound. And also really incredibly beautiful, because ultimately what this simply is this is life itself. When I say reality, I'm saying life. When I say life, I'm saying consciousness. So this is reality, life, consciousness, simply expressing itself through a range of unlimited things. So we don't have to pinpoint it. This is what in yoga language, what I was talking about recently about the dance between Shiva and Shakti. Shiva is the consciousness, is the life presence. And then through the dance, it expresses through a myriad, the 10,000 things. But the dance is always aware that it's always life, it's always consciousness, it's always Shiva. So this is a lovely inquiry of yoga, that we can just sit with the subtlety of experience that we can verify in the moment, but we can't catch it because it's already changed to something else. So this is the flow, this is the unfolding, this is the dance of Shiva and Shakti. Good. So if you do indeed have this right knee bent back, nice just to lean over to the left side and just let it release. So no need to try to come up first, just release that leg out. And then let's just lie here for a few moments before we do the other side. And then the lovely thing about having this, this brilliant design of the human body mind is that's just imagery that if it works for us, we use it. But Shiva and Shakti, no different than yin and yang, no different than masculine and feminine, no different than contracting and expanding. So this is, what we embody in a hatha yoga practice, where contracting, so this is the thing, this is what we feel, this is what we believe we can put our finger on and we can diagnose. This is the contraction. And then we release, and that's the expansion. And then whatever that contraction was seems to dissipate and float and morph and change. But it's still a dance. It's still something we can't fully grasp. Good. So let's come on up, please, and let's do the other side of this. Let's extend the right leg out. We can, the same options before, maybe I just won't go through them all. It's the same thing on this left side, but we are coming forward. Whichever way you have that left leg, we'll come into the forward bend first, and then we'll go into the backward bend. And the really lovely thing about the yoga is we don't have to do anything to have this experience, Shiva, Shakti, yin, yang. We just notice. And it's through the noticing that these energies arise. So allow yourself that, allow yourself that space to see, what is this noticing? Very, very easy to get drawn into what we're noticing. The challenge is to relax out of the objective experience and just see what's noticing. We're just noticing. It's brilliant. It's mind-boggling. It's awesome that we can do this. At the end of the last class, I said, it's not what's happening, it's that it is happening. Makes you just want to be grateful, huh? It's happening. So let's come on up from our forward bend, whatever configuration of the leg you have. And then the choice here is to keep the knee bent or bring it in and around. First choice. Second choice is to use adequate bolstering so you have a balance between ankle, knee, quad, hip, lumbar backward bend, or not. And the amount of or the bolstering is up to you.
it's up to the uniqueness of your fascial barrier, how you approach it with tremendous gentleness and grace, and then be able to allow it to just naturally soften.
So this is just a short reading from my dear friend Stephen Harrison. This is one of his lovely books called Getting to Where You Are. Our search for the end of pain is useless because the source of the pain is that which is searching. The dividing of the world into a me and a you, the very isolation of separation, is inherently painful. The me rants and raves, churning out thought after thought, trying in an ever more panicked manner to find the end of psychological pain. We try therapy, drugs, religion, spirituality, meditation, but nothing seems to work. It can't work because the doer, the one who wants to get better, is the problem. The me is the pain. The end of pain can only come when the me, the separation, the isolation comes to an end. Psychological pain can only come to an end when the resistance to the movement of life comes to an end. Now the bare actuality can emerge freed from our futile sorting of psychological experiences into good and bad, painful and pleasurable, like and dislike. Just this one sentence, I'll just read again because it's so beautiful. The psychological pain can only come to an end when the resistance to the movement of life comes to an end. Good. So let's come on up, please. And again, best to lean away from the leg if it's bent back and release it. And then once you have both legs out, let's remove all bolstering and just lie, and we'll rest for some time here. So let us come on up, or possibly not. I'm going to give you two choices, so maybe just hold on. The first choice would be to go right back to where we started from and to just lie flat, make sure your tailbone isn't pressing on the floor, so you may want a little cushioning, and then put some weight on the lower belly. And we'll just breathe into that weight and let the weight compress and bring our attention to anything that might be being held in this area. So that's the first choice. The second choice would be to indeed come on up, and we'll come into a square position, but we're only going to do one side of this and hold it a little longer. So always the choice is the tighter side that you maybe can be a little more resistant to, or the side that's a little bit more open. You just choose a side. It doesn't really matter. And so we can either do this in an open position, or we can bring that, so either side, so I'm not saying a side, but we can do it open with the foot out in front on something. You could put the foot up onto the calf, and sometimes to deepen it, we put the foot up onto the knee. Yeah, so this will take you very deep into the one of the hips. You could also pull it into the hip as well. So these are all valid versions of the square pose. And then if you're coming in square, we'll just come forward. And again, we're just going to do this once, but it doesn't matter because we're not fooled by symmetry, especially internal symmetry. And neither are we fooled by inner and outer. If you still think that there's an inner and an outer, then try to find that. Try to find the separation between inner and outer. So it's a lovely thing to try. And ultimately, what happens is it's an exhausting endeavor, and then we just relax into wholeness and openness, and there we are in our yoga. And then if you're in the weight on the belly, all of these various ways to approach the applications of the breath, the feeling its rhythm, what is the breath, slowing it down, seeing if it is attached to mind or memories or sensations. So either position you're in, we'll just take this time to explore. I do understand that it is very, very alluring to get attached to our thoughts, especially when we put many of them together and come up with ideas, and put ideas together and come up with belief systems. But the basic understanding is that a thought is nothing more than silence with a shape. So don't go to the thought and try to deconstruct it and go back to silence. Allow yourself to simply rest in silence. And then notice when a energy present starts to morph into a thought. And then allow it to morph, and then allow it to just as easily dissolve and go back to resting in silence. And this in and of itself can be a very relaxing and nourishing and rejuvenating practice, but we can also continue it and allow this to move into our concepts and our spider web of semantics and our most cherished belief system. It's only made of silence that is morphed into a thought, that is morphed into something we're holding. So again, no need to deconstruct. Let's go to silence first. Sit in quiet, equanimity, silence. And then notice what wants to arise. And notice what fades back away. So if you are in the forward bend, the square position, and you'd like to stay there, feel free. We'll be here for a couple more minutes. But if you'd like to unfold and relax back and put some weight on your belly, this might be a good time to do that, but your choice. And reverse, if you've been in the weight on the belly and you would like to come up and just forward bend for a bit, we'll just be here for a couple more minutes. So either way. So wherever you happen to be, let's prepare to close. So make yourself comfortable, any position that you choose, and we'll just take a few moments to end this practice of doing nothing and resting afterwards. And just take this I that we use all day, every day, this I or this I am, and just simply add nothing to it and let it reverberate inward. I, inward. I am, inward. And just let it echo, let it reverberate, let it vibrate inward. If anything wants to attach to this I or I am, let it dissolve, let it fade, and just continue this I reverberating inward, I vibrating inward. And touch the earth, honor the sky, bless the water. Namaste.